The massive crystalline ships appeared without warning, materializing just beyond Mars' orbit like frozen tears in space. Commander Neela Patel of the International Space Defense Fleet watched through the Stellar Guardian's viewport as the alien vessels cast prismatic light across the void, their surfaces refracting starlight in impossible patterns. Her first instinct was to raise shields, but something about their approach seemed different from any invasion scenario they'd trained for. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant James Rodriguez reported from his communications station. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, and somehow it's already translated into every Earth language simultaneously." The message that echoed through the bridge was not one of conquest or demands, but of desperate hope. "People of Earth, we are the Zethians. We come seeking salvation from extinction. Our children are dying, and you may be our last hope." Within hours, the United Earth Council chamber in Geneva was filled with representatives from every nation. Dr. Kai Nakamura, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood before them, his holographic presentations showing the preliminary scans of the Zethian vessels and their occupants. "They're a crystalline-based life form," he explained, his voice carrying both wonder and concern. "Their genetic structure is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's based on quantum crystalline matrices rather than carbon-based DNA. But these matrices are degrading at an accelerating rate." The Zethian ambassador, a being named VYX whose form shifted between translucent crystal and swirling energy, explained their history. 1,000 years ago, we refused to bow to the Nexar Dominion, an ancient race that believed they had the right to control all life in the galaxy. As punishment, they engineered a genetic plague that would destroy us slowly, generation by generation. We've searched countless systems for a cure, but our understanding of genetics is too similar to theirs. We need a completely different perspective. What caught Dr. Nakamura's attention wasn't just the plague itself, but the timing of their arrival. "You chose Earth specifically, didn't you?" he asked. This wasn't a random plea for help. VYX's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been acknowledgement. "We observed your recent breakthrough with quantum genetic engineering during your fight against the Great Plague of 2157. Your species thinks differently than any we've encountered. Where others see rigid patterns, you see endless possibilities. Where others follow established paths, you forge new ones." Commander Patel, who had been invited to the council as the first human to make contact, stood up. "How long do your people have?" The answer sent a chill through the chamber. "At our current rate of degradation, less than 1 Earth year before the crystalline decay becomes irreversible. Within 5 years after that, our entire species will cease to exist." The council chambers erupted in debate. Some argued for caution, fearful of involving Earth in an ancient conflict with unknown consequences. Others pushed for immediate action, seeing both a moral imperative and an opportunity to advance human understanding of genetic science by decades. Dr. Nakamura's team worked through the night, analyzing the quantum crystalline matrices of Zethian genetics. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The plague wasn't just attacking their genetic structure, it was unraveling the very laws of physics that allowed their unique form of life to exist. But in this seemingly insurmountable challenge, they found an unexpected glimmer of hope. Human genetics, specifically the recent adaptations from the Great Plague, had developed unique properties that might hold the key. The very quantum uncertainty that made human genetic engineering so unpredictable could be the weapon needed to fight back against the rigidly deterministic plague. As the first week of first contact drew to a close, Dr. Nakamura stood before the council again, this time with a radical proposal. "We can't cure them with conventional methods," he announced. "But we might be able to save them by doing something unprecedented, creating a hybrid quantum biological interface using modified human genetic sequences as a bridge." The implications were staggering. Success could mean saving an entire civilization and advancing human science by centuries. Failure could potentially create a worse plague or alert the Nexar Dominion to Earth's existence. As the council prepared to vote on whether to proceed, the fate of two species hung in the balance, united by the most powerful force in the universe, the will to survive. In the depths of the Quantum Genetics Research Facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Kai Nakamura stood before a holographic display of intertwining quantum crystalline structures. The beauty of Zethian genetics reminded him of the snowflakes he'd watched as a child in Sapporo, each pattern unique yet following underlying rules of symmetry and order. But these patterns were breaking down, their perfect geometry corrupted by the Nexar plague. The plague is almost elegant in its design, Dr. Isabella Torres, the team's quantum physicist, observed. She manipulated the hologram, highlighting the cascading failure points in red. It doesn't just attack their genetic structure, it creates a quantum resonance that amplifies with each generation. The more they try to reproduce, the faster they die. Commander Patel had taken temporary leave from the Stellar Guardian to serve as military liaison to the project. Can we simply remove the affected sequences, she asked, watching the simulation of decay spread like fractal lightning through the crystalline structure. If only it were that simple, Dr. Torres replied. The plague isn't just in their genetics, it's become part of who they are. Remove it completely, and their entire quantum matrix would collapse. We need something more radical. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Webb, a junior researcher who had survived the Great Plague, noticed something unusual in his own genetic scans. The viral adaptations that had saved humanity had created quantum-stable regions in human DNA, microscopic bridges between classical and quantum states. Look at this, he said, overlaying his genetic scan with the Zethian patterns. Our adapted genes don't follow normal physics. They exist in multiple states simultaneously, like organic quantum computers. What if we could use this to create a buffer zone in their genetic structure? The idea was revolutionary. Instead of trying to remove the plague, they would attempt to contain it within quantum bubbles created by modified human genetic sequences. The Zethians' crystalline nature would be preserved, but with a new layer of protection derived from humanity's own battle for survival. Ambassador VYX and the Zethian scientists were initially skeptical. You propose to alter the fundamental nature of our species, VYX said, their crystalline form vibrating with concern. This goes beyond a cure, it would make us something new, something neither fully Zethian nor human. Sometimes survival requires evolution, Dr. Nakamura responded. Your people have maintained genetic purity for millennia, but that same purity made you vulnerable to the Nexar's attack. Humanity survived because we adapt, because we embrace change. The first trials were conducted on isolated Zethian genetic samples, with results that astonished both species. The hybrid structures were not only stable but displayed properties neither species had seen before. The quantum biological interfaces created patterns of impossible complexity, like windows into dimensions beyond normal spacetime. But the real test would come with living subjects. The Zethian Council of Elders selected 20 volunteers for the first trial, each already showing advanced symptoms of the plague. The procedure would require technology from both species, Zethian quantum manipulators working in concert with human genetic sequencers. As the medical bay was prepared for the first treatment, Dr. Torres made a disturbing discovery. The quantum interactions between human and Zethian genetics, they're not just creating a barrier against the plague. They're establishing some kind of connection, like quantum entanglement on a biological scale. The implications were staggering. If the treatment worked, it wouldn't just save the Zethians, it would bind their species together in ways no one could predict. The question was no longer just about survival, but about what both species would become. On the day of the first treatment, tension filled the facility. 20 Zethian volunteers lay in specially designed chambers, their crystalline forms pulsing with weakening light. Around them, human and Zethian medical teams worked in perfect synchronization, monitoring quantum fields and genetic stability. Dr. Nakamura initiated the sequence, watching as modified human genetic material was introduced into the Zethian quantum matrices. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a symphony reaching its crescendo, the volunteers began to glow with new intensity. Their crystalline forms stabilized, but with subtle changes, traces of organic patterns weaving through the mineral structures, creating something entirely new. The first volunteer, a Zethian elder named Lyrics, spoke in a voice that echoed with both fear and wonder. "I can feel everything. The plague is still there, but it's contained, like a storm in a bottle. And there's something else. I can sense the quantum fields around us, not just see them. We are becoming something more." As the treatment continued through the night, success followed success. But with each transformation, it became clearer that they had done more than find a cure. They had taken the first step towards something unprecedented in galactic history, the voluntary fusion of two species at the quantum level. The question that haunted both humans and Zethians was simple: what would be the cost of this evolution? And more importantly, would the Nexar Dominion allow such a dramatic shift in the balance of power to go unchallenged? 3 months after the first successful treatment, the Quantum Genetics Research Facility had become something entirely unexpected. The treated Zethians, now numbering in the thousands, exhibited abilities that defied conventional understanding. Their crystalline forms had developed organic undertones, swirling with iridescent patterns that responded to human presence. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the observation chamber, watching as Lyrics, the first treated Zethian, demonstrated their new abilities. The elder's crystalline form rippled like liquid starlight as they manipulated quantum fields with unprecedented precision, creating structures that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. "It's not just affecting them," Dr. Isabella Torres reported, reviewing the latest data. "The human staff working closely with the treated Zethians are showing cellular changes. Their DNA is developing crystalline properties, creating quantum-stable regions throughout their bodies." The implications sparked global concern. The United Earth Council called an emergency session as protests erupted outside research facilities worldwide. Some saw the changes as the next step in human evolution, while others feared the loss of human identity. Admiral Jonathan Pierce, who had replaced Commander Patel as military liaison after her own exposure to the quantum changes, addressed the council. "We're dealing with something beyond our original intentions. This isn't just a cure anymore, it's the birth of a new species." In orbit, the remaining untreated Zethian ships had begun to exhibit unusual behavior. Their crystalline hulls pulsed in synchronization with Earth's magnetic field, creating auroral displays visible even during daylight. The quantum entanglement between treated Zethians and their ships had transformed the vessels into something more alive than ever before. Dr. Nakamura's team made another startling discovery. The quantum biological interface wasn't just stable, it was adaptive. Each new generation of treatment produced more sophisticated results. The latest treated Zethians could instinctively manipulate quantum fields in ways that made their previous technological achievements seem primitive. "We've created something beautiful," Ambassador VYX declared during a global broadcast, their form now shimmering with organic crystalline hybridization. But beauty often attracts unwanted attention. The Nexar Dominion will not ignore this forever. The ambassador's warning proved prophetic. Deep space monitoring stations detected unusual quantum disturbances at the edge of the solar system. The patterns matched ancient Zethian records of Nexar surveillance probes. Their ancient enemy was watching. Within the research facility, Dr. Torres worked with Lyrics to understand the full scope of the changes. They discovered that the quantum entanglement between humans and Zethians had created a type of shared consciousness, not a hive mind, but a deeper understanding that transcended normal communication. "We don't just share genetics anymore," Lyrics explained, their thoughts resonating directly in Dr. Torres's mind. "We share potential. Every human innovation, every Zethian discovery, becomes part of our combined heritage. We are becoming something that has never existed before." But with this evolution came unexpected challenges. The first human children born to parents who had worked closely with the Zethians showed signs of crystalline growth in their cellular structure. While harmless and apparently beneficial, it marked a point of no return in human evolution. Religious leaders, political figures, and scientific ethicists engaged in heated debates about the future of both species. Some called for an immediate halt to the treatments, fearing the complete transformation of humanity. Others saw it as destiny, the next step in cosmic evolution. Dr. Webb, whose own body had begun showing signs of crystalline adaptation, addressed these concerns in a paper that quickly went viral. We didn't just save the Zethians, we freed ourselves from the limitations of singular evolution. The question isn't whether we should continue, but how we will handle the responsibility of becoming something greater than the sum of our parts. The turning point came when the first hybrid child was born, not through traditional means, but through a quantum biological merger of human and Zethian genetic patterns. The infant existed in multiple states simultaneously, its form shifting between crystalline and organic patterns in response to its environment. It represented something entirely new in the universe, a being that bridged the gap between matter and energy, between classical and quantum physics. Admiral Pierce, reviewing the security implications, reached a sobering conclusion. The Nexar Dominion won't just see this as a cure for their plague. They'll see it as the emergence of a rival power, one that could challenge their dominion over genetic destiny. We need to prepare. As if in response to humanity's preparations, the quantum disturbances at the solar system's edge intensified. The Nexar probes were no longer simply observing, they were analyzing, calculating, preparing for something larger. Dr. Nakamura, his own body now showing advanced signs of crystalline integration, gathered his team. We didn't just change the Zethians, he said, watching his hands shimmer with quantum potential. We didn't just change humanity. We changed the rules of life itself. Now we have to be ready to defend that change. The hybrid community, growing stronger each day, began preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Human military strategy combined with Zethian quantum technology, creating defense systems that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. But would it be enough to face an enemy that had dominated galactic evolution for millions of years? The Nexar arrived with the silence of an eclipse. Their ships, vast geometric structures that seemed to absorb both light and hope, emerged from quantum space at the edges of the solar system. There were hundreds of them, each larger than Earth's largest cities, their surfaces marked with patterns that seemed to hurt the mind when viewed directly. Admiral Pierce stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned quantum hybrid vessel Prometheus, watching as the enemy fleet took position beyond Neptune's orbit. The ship, like its crew, was a fusion of human and Zethian technology, organic crystalline structures growing seamlessly from traditional hull materials, quantum processors interfacing directly with human minds. They're broadcasting, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, his partly crystalline form shimming under the bridge lights. The message came simultaneously in all known languages, its tone carrying the weight of eons of assumed authority. Lesser beings of Earth and remnants of the Zethian rebellion, the Nexar message began, you have violated the natural order. The gift of evolution is not yours to command. Surrender the hybrid abominations, and your species may continue along its designated path. Resist, and face extinction. Dr. Nakamura, now serving as Chief Science Officer of Earth's Defense Force, shared a knowing look with Ambassador VYX. They had expected this, the Nexar's fundamental inability to accept change, their pathological need to control the evolution of all life in the galaxy. The response to the Nexar came not from any one leader, but as a unified quantum broadcast from every hybrid being in the solar system. Their combined consciousness created a message that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously, demonstrating the very evolution the Nexar sought to prevent. We reject your authority over life's destiny, the message declared. Evolution is not a gift to be granted or withdrawn, it is the fundamental right of all living things. We are not your experiments. We are not your subjects. We are life finding its own way. The Nexar attack began with weapons that bent reality itself. Quantum destabilization beams targeted the hybrid ships, attempting to unravel the quantum biological merger that made them possible. But the hybrid crews had anticipated this, their transformed bodies acting as quantum stabilizers, their very existence anchoring the fabric of spacetime around them. Dr. Torres, monitoring the quantum fields from the Lunar Defense Station, made a crucial discovery. The Nexar weapons, they're based on the same principles as the original plague. They're trying to unravel quantum biological bonds at a fundamental level. This realization provided the key to defense. The hybrid community, now numbering in the millions, could use their quantum-entangled consciousness to create stable fields that the Nexar weapons couldn't penetrate. Every attempt to destroy the hybrid ships instead strengthened the quantum bonds between them. The battle spread across the solar system. Traditional human weapons proved surprisingly effective. The Nexar, for all their advanced technology, had never faced opponents who combined quantum manipulation with the unpredictable creativity of human tactical thinking. Dr. Webb, leading a team of hybrid scientists, discovered something extraordinary during the conflict. The Nexar's attempts to destroy the quantum biological bond were actually catalyzing further evolution. Each attack forced the hybrid community to adapt, to evolve new defenses, new abilities. They were becoming something even more extraordinary under the pressure of survival. The turning point came when Lyrics, working with a group of hybrid children, found a way to reverse the Nexar's quantum weapons. Instead of fighting the destabilization effect, they embraced it, using it to create quantum tunnels directly into the enemy ships. The hybrid warriors who entered these tunnels brought with them humanity's most potent weapon, chaos. The Nexar, who had spent millions of years imposing order on the galaxy, had no defense against beings who could exist in multiple quantum states, who could think in ways that defied their rigid patterns. Their ships, for all their power, were expressions of absolute order. And order, when confronted with controlled chaos, began to break down. Admiral Pierce coordinated the final assault, combining Earth's remaining conventional forces with the hybrid fleet's quantum abilities. The battle strategy existed in multiple possible states until the moment of execution, making it impossible for the Nexar to predict or counter. The Nexar flagship, a construct the size of Earth's moon, was the first to fall. Its perfect geometric patterns shattered by quantum chaos, its crew exposed to the very evolution they had tried to prevent. The sight of their greatest ship breaking apart into crystalline fragments that reflected the light of distant stars became a symbol of liberation for both humanity and the Zethians. One by one, the Nexar ships either retreated or succumbed to the hybrid assault. Their perfectly ordered fleet, designed to impose genetic destiny on the galaxy, could not withstand the combined might of two species who had chosen to embrace change rather than fear it. As the last Nexar ships vanished into quantum space, Dr. Nakamura stood in the observation dome of the lunar station, his hybrid form reflecting the light of Earth. The planet below had changed, its cities now growing with crystalline structures, its people evolving into something new and wonderful. The Zethian ships in orbit had become part of this transformation, their crystalline forms merging with human stations to create structures that existed in harmony with both species. "They'll be back," Ambassador VYX said, joining him at the window. "The Nexar cannot accept a universe they don't control." "Let them come," Dr. Nakamura replied, watching a group of hybrid children playing in the zero-gravity chamber, their forms shifting effortlessly between states of matter. "We'll continue to evolve, continue to change. That's the one thing they can never understand, the power of choosing your own destiny." 1 year after the Nexar retreat, Earth had become nearly unrecognizable. Cities pulsed with crystalline towers that responded to the thoughts and emotions of their inhabitants. The skies shimmered with aurora-like displays as hybrid ships moved through quantum states, their crews existing simultaneously in multiple forms of consciousness. In the transformed quantum genetics research facility, now extending both above and below the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Isabella Torres led a team of hybrid scientists studying the accelerating rate of evolution. The laboratory itself had become a living thing, its walls shifting and adapting to support whatever research was being conducted within. "The transformation is happening faster than we ever imagined," she explained to the United Earth Council, her form shifting between solid and crystalline states as she spoke. The hybrid children are developing abilities we hadn't thought possible. They don't just manipulate quantum fields, they intuitively understand the fundamental language of the universe. The hybrid children had become a source of both wonder and study. Born into a world of infinite possibility, they moved through reality as easily as their ancestors had walked on solid ground. They could perceive quantum probabilities as clearly as visible light, their minds capable of processing multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Admiral Pierce, his once conventional military bearing now tempered by crystalline grace, oversaw the integration of Earth's defense forces with Zethian quantum technology. "We're not just protecting Earth anymore," he said during a strategic briefing. "We're guarding the future of evolution itself." The Zethian ships that had once appeared as outcasts at the edge of the solar system had become part of a greater whole. Their crystalline structures merged with human space stations, creating living habitats that expanded humanity's understanding of what was possible. The quantum entanglement between all hybrid beings had created a new form of society, not a hive mind, but a symphony of consciousness where individuality and unity coexisted in perfect balance. Dr. Nakamura, now more energy than matter, worked with Ambassador VYX to document the transformation for future generations. "We didn't just save 2 species," he noted in his quantum-encoded journals. "We opened a door that can never be closed. Every day brings new discoveries, new possibilities, new ways of being." The hybrid community had begun to receive signals from other civilizations across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of the Nexar dominion, now reaching out to learn about the power of self-directed evolution. Earth had become a beacon of hope, proving that the path of life couldn't be controlled or predicted by any single power. Lyrics, who had first demonstrated the potential of the hybrid transformation, now led expeditions to the edges of known space. The quantum biological ships they commanded could traverse vast distances by existing in multiple locations simultaneously, their crews exploring not just physical space but the very boundaries of reality. Dr. Webb, his research now focused on the next phase of hybrid evolution, made a profound discovery. The quantum biological interface wasn't just changing their bodies and minds, it was altering their relationship with time itself. The hybrid beings could perceive probable futures, understanding not just what might be, but how to guide evolution toward the most beneficial outcomes. "We're becoming something that the universe hasn't seen before," he explained to a group of hybrid children, their forms shimmering with potential. "Not just a new species, but a new way of being. Every choice we make ripples through quantum reality, creating new possibilities." The transformed Earth had become a living symbol of defiance against the Nexar's vision of controlled evolution. Cities grew like crystal gardens, each structure a unique expression of the beings who lived within. The oceans teemed with hybrid life forms, as marine biology merged with quantum physics to create ecosystems that existed in multiple states simultaneously. In orbit, the hybrid fleet continued to grow, each ship a living entity born from the combined knowledge and creativity of both species. They were no longer simply vessels of exploration or defense, they were seeds of change, ready to carry the message of free evolution to the farthest reaches of space. Ambassador VYX, addressing a gathering of hybrid and conventional beings from across the solar system, captured the spirit of their new civilization. The Nexar sought to control evolution because they feared what life might become when left free to find its own path. "We have proved that their fear was justified, not because freedom leads to chaos, but because it leads to wonders they could never imagine." As the hybrid civilization looked toward the future, they knew the Nexar might return, bringing new weapons and strategies to enforce their vision of genetic destiny. But Earth and its people had moved beyond the point where such threats could inspire fear. They had become the living embodiment of evolution itself, adaptable, resilient, and infinitely creative. The hybrid children played in quantum fields, their laughter rippling through multiple dimensions. They were the first generation to be born free of anyone's predetermined path, their potential limited only by imagination and the laws of physics, laws which, they were discovering, had more flexibility than anyone had dreamed possible. In the end, the story of humanity's salvation of the Zethian race had become something far greater, a testament to the power of choosing one's own destiny, of facing the unknown with courage and creativity, and of finding strength not in isolation but in the willingness to become something new together. As Dr. Torres watched the next generation of hybrid beings take their first steps into quantum reality, she understood that this wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. The universe was vast, full of possibilities and potential new allies. And somewhere out there, the Nexar were watching, perhaps beginning to question their own rigid beliefs about the nature of life and evolution. The future was uncertain, existing in multiple quantum states of possibility. But that uncertainty wasn't a source of fear anymore, it was the very essence of their freedom, the gift they had given themselves by choosing to embrace change rather than resist it. In their transformation, they had discovered the greatest truth of all, that life's greatest purpose was not to maintain order, but to explore the infinite possibilities of existence itself.